Hello, hello, hello. All words come on up so I can post my comment here. If I don't make my first comment, then anybody else's comments don't show up for whatever reason. So here we go. So let's see. Should I join Freemasonry? That's what I'm thinking about today. Oh, last time I got on here it was late. And I was so tired and my brain was barely here. And I said some really weird stuff. And I was like saying the right things, but I couldn't bring up the words. Nothing was making any sense. And I knew that, so I didn't even post it to YouTube. I just left it on Facebook. I mean, I was saying some profound things, but I couldn't get it in order in my, when your brain's just not running on all four cylinders. But I don't think that's the case this morning. Should be good. Definitely got some interesting things to say. Most people are working right now. I realize that, so I don't know how many people will join. Hi, Kirk. How you doing? So I am stalling for time a little bit. I am thinking about the possibility of joining Freemasons. I'm not really just putting that out there like just to kick around. I'm actually thinking about going up there and talking to them. And I'll tell you why. This is what got me started on it. Okay, I was watching Marnie Leeds. That's Leeds. I get her. I'll spell it on here in case anybody else is looking for it later. But I don't think that's his real name. But he has a YouTube channel. Does really great when it comes to a lot of sacred math. I learned about that septenary cipher from him and so forth. Well, you have to discount the flat earth stuff. I mean, I am not a flat earther by any stretch of the imagination. And I have given it an honest shot. Okay, it's not like I just cast it out willy-nilly. Okay, I admire anybody who takes the time to question what people say, and everybody should. You should take the time to really know if people are telling you the truth or not. And it's just common sense in my mind, because we're not born knowing everything, so we have to ask questions. And I admire anybody, even if they come to the wrong conclusion, for asking questions. You should ask if the world is round. You should ask that question. What bewilders me, though, what I don't understand is when you get into the sacred math and all the sacred numbers, and as he does extensively, okay, he'll get to the proving that the world is round and that they've known it for thousands of years. And he'll funnel that information down, and it's obvious that that's what they're saying, and that they've been saying this for thousands of years, that the world's round, the world's round. And then right at the last second, he'll turn it around and come to the conclusion that the world's flat. And I'm just like, how did he get that? I mean, how did he get that out of the 3168 that tells you, the size of the world in relationship with a triangle and the pyramids of Giza? They're telling you exactly how big the world is. How would you turn that around and try to say that it's flat? It doesn't make any sense. So I admire him for asking the question, but he's come to the wrong conclusion. But all the evidence that he uses points exactly the opposite of what he says. So it doesn't make any sense. But this is not about flat earth today. We're talking about Freemasonry. And I did watch his video. And that's why I don't discount somebody because they come to the wrong conclusions. And that's why I was talking about Marnie Leeds there. Okay, because he does have a lot of good information. And he said that we're talking wrong about Freemasons. Okay. And I've learned a lot from Marnie Leeds' videos, a lot. Okay, he says a lot of good things. And his information reaches a different conclusion than what he does too on some things. But he said we should read Morals and Dogmas from Albert Pike. Now this is interesting, Albert Pike. And I did. So I bought this book because I watched Marnie Leeds' video. It came on Amazon. It was only like $4. Okay, it's not very big. Okay, this is Albert Pike, 33rd degree Mason. Okay. Think about this name, Albert Pike, right here, okay? This guy is an uncle, great uncle maybe, great uncle of Hugh Squire that I'm talking about all the time. And Hugh has been telling me that the Freemasons are actually, they've got some things right, that they had a lot to do with the foundation of the country. Things that I've heard said, but I was like, yeah, but they're keeping secrets. They're not telling everybody openly the truth. So what's the balance between proclaiming the truth, like Jesus said, to proclaim the truth? We're not a light hidden under a bushel, but a city on a hill. How do you balance that between proclaiming and casting your pearls before swine? Because you don't want to tell everybody the truth. Well, the Freemasons have it so that you have to knock on their door. I literally just went by. I thought I'd go talk to them today, or I would try. And they're a lot like most churches. I mean, there's never anybody there, so it may be a while before I actually find somebody there to go talk to. So, still amazes me to this day how we have so many churches all over the church on every block in America, which is a good thing. But what I don't understand is why they sit there most of the week completely unoccupied and unused. You have a building that is using power, and you got to keep it somewhat tempered at least, You can't just let it fall down into 30 degrees in the winter and, reach 99 degrees in summer and that sort of thing. So it's going to use power, cost resources, a lot of land, and then only get used 5 hours a week, a couple hours on Sunday morning, a couple hours on Sunday evening, and an hour on Wednesday. Well, the Freemasons Lodge is the same way. They have this, and you always notice that they always set their buildings, when possible, at the top of the hill or in the highest part of the city, like the Catholic churches did in Europe. And they still do somewhat here, but in Europe, they always had the high ground, But here, they always have immaculate buildings. I'm always thinking to myself, for people that pride themselves on giving to the poor, why are they spending all this money proclaiming themselves almost as rulers? It's like the highest knowledge. Well, I don't have a problem with them believing that they have the truth, okay? Well, because if you don't believe that you have the truth, will change your mind. So if you think you have the truth and you have something to herald and proclaim, well, herald and proclaim it. But why then is it a secret? And now this is what I've been learning, that through my experience, when you try to give somebody the truth, they will not receive it. I mean, by and large, this is why they keep secrets. You have to come to them and knock on the door, and they'll give it to anybody who sincerely wants it and asks for it and will join. But they don't, they do write books, and that's why, that's why we have books from, where did I put it here? Not only do I have the Morals and Dogmas, but now you weren't supposed to own this. Okay, this was wrote in 1871, right after the Civil War. But it says right here, okay, look, esoteric book for Scottish Rite use only, to be returned upon withdrawal of the death of the recipient. So we weren't really supposed to have this, but you can order it on Amazon for $4, like I did. Where'd the other one go? Here it is. And I have books like this, from Manly P. Hall. Now, he wrote this before he became a Freemason, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But the information is accessible today. And I think in the modern realm of the internet, that the modern time of the internet, that the Freemasons are going to have to start defending what they know a little better. You can't base how things work today on how it's happened for the last 6,000 years of human history, or however long you believe humans have been around, because now you can look up this information and people get confused by it. And if you, like I did for so long, and if you just see a symbol, if you just went back and saw some of the first videos I did, I just went out, I literally went to the Freemason Lodge here in Belpre, and I said, what's going on with this symbol here in the front? This has got to be devilish. I mean, the Eastern star that the women use here, this is the same star that the Satanists use. So it must be evil, right? It was simplistic logic, but I was just getting started, and I wanted to challenge these things, and I had no understanding of what they really meant and how they worked. Now, through a great deal of reading and research and listening and understanding and growing my knowledge exponentially. I mean, I think in just the last 8 months since I've started doing this, it's October, gosh, man, time's flying. the last 10 months I've been doing this, that I feel like every 2 or 3 months that my understanding of these things, it's almost like it just, an exponential knowledge. It's like when I think I've learned so much, 3 months later, it's beyond the screen. It's, I can't even show it. It just grows so fast, and there's so much to learn. And I still don't think that I know it all by any stretch of the imagination. This is why I start so many of my videos with saying, nobody goes to hell for disagreeing with Greg. What I teach and learn is not meant to be an authority. It's supposed to be my mind growing and me sharing with you where my mind is at right now. You're free to take what I have, discard whatever piece of it you want, add to your knowledge, and feel free to influence me, because I'm always open to listening to the understanding and ideas of other people. And I try very hard to constantly grow my understanding. And in my experience, there's not very many people in the world that do that. Some of you are probably wondering what that jewelry is. My wife sells jewelry. I just noticed it's like on the side of my... So I'm using her room today instead of my attic room. There's just a lot more room down here. So my knowledge has grown greatly about Freemasonry, about symbols, about gematria, about numerology. When I first came into gematria, I was very nervous about what the numbers meant and wondering if they were predicting deaths of certain people, and so I put them to the test. And the thing is I'm not scared like some people are to go out and make a little bit of a mess, get things wrong, because I know that that's the only way you're going to expand your mental muscles and learn what the truth really is. Most people are just really scared to do that, because they're afraid they'll offend somebody, they're afraid they'll get something wrong, or they're afraid somebody will come back and say, well, you said this and this didn't happen. But I always preface, this is what I think's going on right now. I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong. Help me learn. And that's the thing. When you don't really have teachers to teach you this knowledge, you have to go out and try to figure out what you can for yourself. Well, hello, everybody. I see Adrian and Derek and Dana and Stephen and Kevin, everybody joining on. So I've got a great crowd today. I appreciate you guys taking the time to spend with me, because honestly, it's like when you try to talk to this knowledge to anybody, you don't get the best response. You don't get very many people who are willing to actually sit down and discuss it with you. And so my thoughts are, maybe if I joined Freemasonry, I would get some people who would actually, supposedly it's supposed to be a mystery school. It's supposed to be a place where you can take this information, and people there might be able to tell me how to use it beneficially, what to do with it. And because I'm noticing that there's a great deal of truth in the mysteries and in how we should interpret the Bible and how we should understand the past, how we can understand the mounds, for instance. You should, if you've not seen my mound video where I've gone back to the mounds in Marietta and have just really expounded on what those mounds meant. And then after I understood it, I went back and I read several books on the mounds, and they were saying the same thing that I was saying. And I was so impressed with the fact that I come to, my hand's backward. And I come to the same knowledge that some of these great researchers have come to on my own. And I'm just going, wow, these megalithic builders of the mounds really understood some sacred knowledge. And they have a whole lot of the 666 in there as well. And it's amazing what we don't understand about that number 666 and what it really means. And so how do you talk to people about this? If you try to mention it at church or anything, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to understand. By and large, Christians are not open to really understanding what the Bible means. They think they know what the Bible means, and I did for a long time. By and large, you'll even see that most of the people who think they know what it means haven't even read it a single time, let alone really studied the mysteries or the understanding behind it. By and large, you will see that most Christians have not read the Bible a single time. Now, I remember when I was 13 years old and I felt the call to preach, which you've heard me talk about in the last few videos, that there's no such thing as a call to preach and all that sort of thing. If God calls you, you'll know it. I mean, You know, if you are walking in the desert and a bush catches on fire and you hear a loud voice that says, take your shoes off because you're on holy ground, then count that as a calling. But, you know, for most of us, we just think we have this emotional feeling, this desire to go out and to spread what we know and understand to be true because we feel strongly about that, and we call that the call of God. And of course, there's no such thing in the Bible. You go out and research all the people who are called in the Bible. None of them were called like that. You know, not a single one was called like that. So we have a lot of people who think they know the Bible, but they've never even read it a single time. They have absurd views about the Bible. They think they're called from God. We have a pastor who's probably going to be a great guy coming to our church, and I'm not at all knocking him, but you know, he believes that he's called from God to come to our church. You know, we're in between pastors right now, and of course that's just nonsense. I mean, I love the people, but you know, they didn't get that from the Bible. You know, I didn't get that from the Bible when I thought I was called to preach. You know, obviously God didn't call me to preach. You know. Or I'd be doing it, right? Like, you know, the gifts and calling of God are without repentance. Well, he's not talking about what you think it means, you know. If he did, then if God called you, you wouldn't, you know, what God starts, he's going to finish, you know. You're not going to be able to turn away from it. You know, when God called Jonah and he turned away, a big fish swallowed him up and spit him back out on the shore, and he was pretty persuaded at that point he had to go. You know, God's not going to change his mind, okay? But everybody thinks they're called, and then they don't do what they say they're called to do, and then they still say that God called them. Well, you know, what kind of God are you serving? A very weak God, apparently, a God who doesn't send a fish after you if you turn away. So anyway. Obviously, I don't think I was ever called of God. And if I try to talk to people about the greater mysteries and the truths, you're immediately shut down by people who don't understand the Bible and who, in large part, have never even read it a single time. I remember when I was 13 years old thinking I was called of God, well, deciding that I was going to go ahead and read the Bible, because if you're going to call yourself a Christian and you want to preach, well, probably the first thing you should do is read the Bible. So at 13 years old, I read the Bible for the first time. And no, I'm not virtue signaling or trying to make it sound like I'm holier or more righteous than you are. I'm just trying to tell you that if you think you're a Christian, you know, maybe you should read the Bible. You know, that just seemed apparent to me when I was a teenager, and I thought, you know, maybe it should be apparent to most other people too, but for some reason it isn't. It's not self-evident for whatever reason to most people that if you're going to call yourself a Christian, you should read the Bible. You know, read it from cover to cover. You know, it just takes like 5 chapters a day. You'll read it through in a year. You know, man, they say chapters like a chapter in a book, but most of the chapters of the Bible are very small. You know, the reason why you can't sit there and read through, you know, most books in the Bible in a single sitting. You know, I read this Freemasonry book. It's 105 pages. I read that through, you know, in a few hours. You know, I mean, and you can do the same thing with the Bible. You could read it in a month or two pretty easily if you put your mind to it. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to read every single word and laboriously. You know, you can skim over when you're saying, okay, so and so begat so and so or whatever. You can kind of just not skip necessarily, but you can just kind of skim through that and say, okay, we're to the end of the begats now, you know. But there's a lot of knowledge in that, and a lot of knowledge has been changed. So it's good to kind of be familiar with everything in there, because like it or not, I've spent a lot of time thinking that the King James Bible was the only Bible, and it really still is, but there are mistakes in it without a doubt. And when I say mistakes, and there's no way you can dispute this, there were literally hundreds of years taken out of the lifespans of some of the people in Genesis. There's no possible way you can dispute this. The numbers are there in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're not there in the Masoretic texts. The oldest one we have today, not counting the Dead Sea Scrolls, is from 1000 AD, okay? And it was in Russia. Okay, obviously the Masoretes changed it. Okay, the Masoretic Jews that were guardians of that knowledge didn't like the understanding of the they didn't like the popular interpretation of Melchizedek. Okay, and so they took the dates out of some of the descendants or ancestors of Abraham because of that. And there's no question that they took those numbers out. Okay, we wouldn't have known that without the Dead Sea Scrolls, but we do know that now. But it looks very suspicious when you read it. You know, how did it go down sort of gradually after Genesis, and then all of a sudden cuts way down? You know, the bottom drops out of it. Well, it's because somebody took those numbers out. You know, took some hundreds of years off of their lifespan. And it's because of their theology about Melchizedek. Now, so things have been changed in the Bible. There's no question about it, but that doesn't mean that it's not right. It just means our understanding of it is different than what it should be. Well, likewise, there's a whole lot of things in the Bible that we have to understand not only through history, but we have to also understand through sacred knowledge, through mathematics, because the Bible is a mathematical book primarily. It's meant to be understood through mathematics. Here's a great book that somebody sent me that people should understand. You should get this. Okay, somebody actually just mailed this to me and said, I want you to read this. And this is a great book. Okay, Kabbalah Secrets Christians Need to Know. Okay, there's a lot of very important information in here. In fact, I'm going to take a page or two of this right now and teach you something I think you'll think is pretty interesting. Now, I'll turn my camera to my board right here. This is Genesis 1:1, okay, the very beginning of it, where it says, in the beginning, that's one word, Bereshith. If in Star Wars you've heard of the Sith Lords, well, Sith comes from that Shith. That's also the word that we get our number 6 from. The Jews believe that that verse literally says, in the beginning, God created 6. Okay? That is the original understanding of that verse. In the beginning, God created 6. Bereshith, in the beginning. Okay? That's literally what that means. Okay? And we have misinterpreted it and misunderstood it without the Kabbalah, without the sacred knowledge, without the mathematics put into it, and so we have seriously undermined what was meant by the authors of the Bible when they wrote it. Does this mean everything in the Zohar is right? No. There's been a whole lot of other things added in the Zohar that are not right, okay? But there are parts that are very much connected to the reality of how we are supposed to interpret and understand Genesis. Now, for example, we say that God created man on the 6th day. Well, here's the Hebrew letters, okay, of the Tetragrammaton. But normally you write from right to left in Hebrew, and I'm not a Hebrew expert. I'm literally looking at the book as I write this, okay? So look, here's a Yod. That's the letter Yod. Hey. Vav. This is actually a little shorter. It looks like this. And another Hey. Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey. That's the name of God, okay? That's Jehovah, YHVH, Jehovah, right? Now, here's the values of these letters. Okay, 10, 5, 6, and 5. Now, 10 plus 5 is 16, or 15, sorry, 15, and 1 plus 5 is 6, okay? So you have a 6 here, okay? Obviously, this is already 6, and this Hey just goes, just like it says in the Bible that the limbs can do nothing without the head, right? Well, okay, you just do the same thing, the 5 and the 10 again. So you literally have just, 15, 1 plus 5 is 6 again. So the number of man is literally 666, and you'll see how it kind of looks like a man. Okay, there's the head, the arms, the torso. Now this Vav here, you've probably heard this on the energy drinks before. The 3 Vavs on the monster drinks, looks like that. Like a monster scratch, and it has the 666 there on it, Well, that's because they're using this Hebrew letter Vav, at least that's what people say, and they're probably right about that. Now, this right here is what the Freemasons use, the Yod. This is where we get our name God from. It's not hard to understand that, really. Now let's just okay, back up a little here. Okay, I used to think that God came from the word good. It's more likely the other way around. Good probably came from the word God. Okay, but the word God comes from the word yod, that little symbol in Hebrew. Okay, something like that. It's almost like a little accent mark. Now try to understand what you've seen. Yahweh become Jehovah in the King James Version. You've seen Yeshua become Joshua. Okay, so you know how Y and J are the same thing. You understand that. And then you've seen how through history, hey Pete, I was just talking about your book here that you got me, buddy. I actually got some of this stuff out of your book. So you see the J is synonymous with G, okay, like Jeff, okay, can also be spelled, like that, right? So the progression is Y, J, and JG. So Yod, you can easily see how Yod can become God, okay? So our understanding of how that word developed isn't really that hard to see. If you just know a little bit of the history of language and a little bit of common sense and with it. So, and like this book says, Bereshith, in the beginning, God created six. Okay, that's literally what that says. This is the word for six. Shith. Or in Star Wars, you have the Sith Lords, the six lords, And I know this may come as a big surprise to a whole lot of people out there, but Hollywood is mostly run by Jews who understand Kabbalah. Shock, 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 right? How many of you didn't know that? Well, it's surprising how many don't know that. By the way, you want to know where the Jews are in a real easy way? Just look for anybody with a Steen or Stein on the end of their name. A lot of Jews have that word Stein at the end of their name. So that's one good way to define a lot of Jewish people. Okay, so now my question is, was the Morals and Dogmas book that Marnie Leeds wanted me to read here by Albert Pike, 33rd degree Mason. Okay, is he telling the truth? Is Freemasonry a good thing, or as I've been misled in the past to understanding, even recently, is Freemasonry evil because they keep secrets and symbols? But what I've been talking about before some of you come on is that when I, in my own experience, tried to talk to other Christians or other people about Freemasonry ideas, which they don't come from Freemasonry. Understand that these symbols are much, much, much older than Freemasonry. I'm met with resistance from anyone who wants to, when I want to try to explain it to people. When I want to talk to others, or I want to try to come to an understanding, I'm met with 100% rejection. Okay, so far, I've never met a single person who says, "Let's get to the bottom of this knowledge together. Let's try to understand this stuff and come to a conclusion about it sensibly." No, you're met with immediate, "Oh, that's devilish. Oh, that's demonic. Oh, that's," but it's just not. It's not devilish or demonic. These symbols have been around for many thousands of years, as I demonstrated very well, I think, in my explanation of the mounds in Marietta and what they mean. It is my opinion that those mounds have been around for at least 3,000 years. And on the signs, they say anywhere from AD 900 to 1000 BC. I think they're much older than that. They are most likely the descendants of the Danites, or of maybe even the 10 tribes altogether. One way you might know that is if you look in the Apocrypha, okay? Now, the Apocrypha was taken out of the Bible, okay, by the King James translators. I believe it was probably in the original Greek text. I don't know. I think Erasmus had it. I think Erasmus had compiled the apocryphal books, okay? So let's see, how many apocryphal books are there real quick? Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there's 14 books here, and then I know there's first and second, dang it, my brain just fried on me. Well, there's the book of Jasher, which I have right here. Okay, this was also another book that wasn't included. There was also the book, oh my gosh, why is my brain? Enoch, there we go. So there's first and second Enoch, so that's 15, 16, 17, and there's apparently one more I can't think of. Jubilees, I think it is. It's probably a book of Jubilees. I think that's right. So, and I don't have that one, so I wouldn't like to get that one. But I do have second Enoch upstairs, but not first Enoch. So that would make 18. There were 18 books not included in the King James Bible. Stay clear from Freemasonry. Well, see, that's what people generally want to say. But I'll tell you this: when I try to get to the understanding of this knowledge with anybody else, you're met with 100% rejection. Straight out of hand. People that have spent zero time trying to understand it reject it out of hand. So anyway, there were 66 books of the Bible right now. In the King James Bible, and those other 18 books were not included. So what is 66 plus 18? 66, 76, 86, 84, is that right? 84? So there were 84 original books, and now we're left with 66 books. But anyway, the reason that I open this up here, okay, let me read to you from 2nd Esdras chapter 13, one of the books in the Apocrypha. Okay, this tells you what happened to the 10 tribes when they left, when they were taken captive by Syria. I'm just going to read it straight out of here, okay? Let's see. And whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmaneser the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so they came to another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, and they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth to a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go. So they'd already gone down the Euphrates River, and then there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. And the same region is called Arsaris. So it took them a year and a half from the Euphrates River to get where they were going, to a land where no man dwelt. And those are the 10 tribes that were taken captive by Assyria. But some of them obviously didn't want to be kept captive, so they fled, and they ran to what appears possibly, at least one possibility could be, that they came all the way to America. Now, you say, well, how do we even know that they would have done that? Well, let's see if the math of the mounds kind of goes with the knowledge that they came from where they had lived before. And it matches so well with the base 6 system from the Chaldee roots that they had. And they were taken captive by Assyria. So people that would have this understanding of the base 6 system and of sacred math and of a Kabbalah type understanding. Kabbalah meaning cube, the knowledge and understanding of the cube, which is where we get the Merkaba, which is the 6-pointed star of the Jews. Okay, that's just a cube on its side, connected points. If you look at it from its corner, you take a cube and you look at it from its corner, it now has 6 sides instead of 4. That's a little secret of Kabbalah that I just taught you there if you didn't understand that. And you look at the mounds in America from these folks that left the 10 tribes, the 10 tribes that were taken captive and fled, and you look at what is built in America, and you see a whole lot of interesting similarities. That's why it would be very good for you to go back and watch my video on the Marietta Mounds. The knowledge that I gave is really, really, I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's amazing stuff. And then when I went back and read other books on the mounds from other people, they were saying a lot of the same things I did. And I was astounded that I found so much, including the number 666. And they were using a base 6 system. And you say, well, we measured it in feet and inches. And silly people today will say, well, no, those were Indians that built that. Well, don't you know, Greg, that those, and somebody did tell me this, that they didn't use feet and inches. But when you read the accounts of the tribes that were here, you find out that the Indians freely admit, almost all of them, that they had nothing to do with building the mounds, that they were here when they came, that the people that were here that inhabited the land before them were much larger than them, had paler skin, and in most incidences had red hair. Those, and we call them giants, but we say most of the giants that were found were in the 7 to 9 foot category. I'm not talking about 30-foot giants or 50-foot giants or anything like that, but they were definitely taller than the Indian people or Native Americans, if you want to call them that. Some people get too offended, and I'm not big on walking on eggshells, so if you get offended easy, just go ahead and hang it up here. I don't like to talk to offended people, and I don't like to tiptoe, so I'm not going to call them Native Americans and all that. I'll just go with the Christopher Columbus term. And they were not the original inhabitants of the land, and they tell you they were not the original inhabitants of the land, so why don't we just believe what they say? They say they didn't make the mounds. Now, the mounds, however, the math of the mounds freely shows 666, like the one in Marietta. From the mound to the ditch was 36 feet, which is the triangular of 666. And that mound is located very, very close to 666 foot above sea level. And when you count the distances between the 3 mounds, those 3 mounds put together come up with 3168, which is the number that would go around the entire Earth. Okay, let me go back to my board here. And some of you have never seen this before, so I'm going to go back to that. I'll just draw my mounds here. Now remember, you're going to want to go back and see the video on my mound video, because I went into a lot more detail than I'm going to give you here. Okay, here was the round mound from the side that would look like this. Okay, but I'm just showing you from overhead. Okay, then there was a mound here and a mound here. This distance was 1 megalithic yard, okay? And this was 2160, pretty close to, that was our cube distance, okay? So 2160 and 1054, let's see, 4, 11, 2, 3. And that's just a little bit different. And depending on what point that you measure around the ditch and so forth, you come up with very close to our 3168. There's different places around this mound because there was several circles around it, okay? So depending on which one that you use and which distance, you have your cube, which is the width of the moon, okay, 2,160. You have your megalithic yard measurement that's present at Stonehenge and 1,000 other places around the world. And you put it together and it equals 3168, okay? You can see it's just a little bit over, but there's reasons for that. You can go into my last video and see it. I'm estimating right now to make it simple. Okay, now 3168 is this. You have the Earth, okay, and if you made a perfect square around the Earth, that's 3168. If it touched all 4 sides, it was a freehand drawing, okay. And that number right there, the people that built those mounds were telling you how big the world was. So it's very hard for anybody, in my opinion, to come back and say that the world is flat when they're telling you the dimensions of the Earth right there in the mounds. And then that first mound right there, okay, which was 666 foot above sea level, had a 36-foot ring around it. And I believe it was originally 36 foot tall. It's shorter than that now. The top was chopped off. but I think it was originally 36 foot tall as well. Now, isn't that amazing? 3168, and they got that. And this is all a base 6 system, and they're using feet and inches way back then. And it was very amazing because one time I was talking about how the Washington Memorial in Washington, D.C. was 555 feet tall. Okay, 555 feet tall, which multiplied by 12, so it's 12 inches in a foot, equals, I'm sorry, camera's not all the way on there. 555 times 12 equals 6,660. Well, would you know that there are mounds right here in Ohio that are 555 foot circumference? And that's not coincidence. They were using a base 6 system. The base 6 system is the oldest system of measurement in the world. And that's why our Freemason forefathers, many of them were Freemason, not all of them, they kept this knowledge and our understanding in our architecture here in America today. So much of Washington, D.C. is built by Freemason architecture and sacred geometry such as this, including the Washington Monument. People get caught up and say, well, it's 3 or 4 inches off or something, depending on which site you look at on the internet. So therefore, it can't be true because it's 4 inches off, and that's just silly nonsense. Okay, what's 3 or 4 inches out of 555 feet? You can see what they're striving for, and sometimes you just have to have enough common sense to understand what was going on. And some of these mounds, they might round slightly different or something like that, but they've been sitting there for 3,000 years, So, and the amount of knowledge that I have come from, and if you go back and watch that video on the mounds, everything that I said is only a piece of what I'm writing in my book about it. There's so much knowledge just in 3 little mounds; it'll blow your mind. Okay, sacred math is real. Okay, and we should take the knowledge that was given to us and use that, because the people who translated the Bible used this sacred math and this sacred knowledge when they translated it. And not only when they translated it, but Erasmus had the original Greek languages, and had the original Greek documents in his Greek New Testament, that has not been changed because it was the received text. Okay, that goes back. We don't have any original manuscripts of the New Testament, but we do have what's called the received text. That is the text that was given, received down through thousands of years that were understood to be accurate copies. So we have tens of thousands of received text documents that agree with each other, that Erasmus also had most of it. Okay, he didn't actually have a full copy of the received text. He had most of the received text. Okay, he actually got, everybody that says, well, the King James Bible, well, Erasmus didn't even have all of the received text when he translated the King. When the King James translators used Erasmus Greek text, Erasmus didn't even have all of the received text to begin with. So the King James translators did have to use some of other works besides received text when they translated it. So that there's a lot of things there that I don't understand why we haven't put that together. So anyway, there is a mathematical knowledge that was in the received text, okay, and that was in the Old Testament books, okay, that were passed down too, that come from Kabbalah and cube knowledge. The same knowledge is in the mounds that dates back to pretty close to the same age as the original authorship of the Old Testament. Think about that for a second. They're using the same math. And for some reason, we try to pretend that math is not in the Bible. We just try to pretend like it's not there, or we're not supposed to look at it, or we're just not going to understand it. And if somebody says symbol or 666, they automatically say devil, and this is demonic, and this is evil, and you never get to have an intelligent conversation about it. So when I was watching the Marnie Leeds most recent video on YouTube, and he started talking about how Freemasonry uses the symbols, but they didn't invent the symbols, okay? They're just using some of the symbols. Like we were talking about the G here, okay, and the Yod and the G. We said that God comes from Yod, Bereshith in the beginning. God created 6, okay? And we talked about how man was 6. Well, the Freemason symbols is like this. We take it, the Yod is that, okay, we have from God. Well, the Freemason symbol is this. Okay, it has the G in it. Okay, that's just the Yod right here. That's all it is. You know, it used to be in a triangle in Hebrew and in Kabbalah. That was a symbol for one of the many symbols for God. Okay, so you got the G there. Well, they tell you in Freemasonry that that G stands for God. Hey, Joey, how you doing, man? And also hi to Roy and Gloria and Frank and Burton that had just joined me. So everybody came on there. Now, so how are you going to talk to anybody about this knowledge if you don't join something like Freemasons? You know, how are you going to actually be able to know if you're interpreting the knowledge correctly if you don't have anybody who's willing to study or understand it? What I have seen is that Christians, by and large, will simply close their eyes, you know, do this, you know, la, 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 I'm not listening, you know, I'm not going to hear. You know, even recently when I've tried to introduce some of this understanding to people, they just will have nothing to do with it, okay? And I am one of the people that was like that recently. You know, I've taken Freemasons with deep suspicion. Okay, I treated them with deep suspicion and wondering why they were hiding secrets. Why do they have the big buildings up on the hill and huge amounts of property and immaculate structures? And that they must be up to something wrong. And then the symbols that I saw seem to be associated with the devil. Okay, all right, because you see an Eastern star, and then you see the Satanists using the same upside down star, and you're going, oh my gosh, they're evil. And that's exactly what I thought as well. So I misinterpreted and misunderstood the symbols and took it to mean that they must be using it for evil because other people use these symbols for evil. But I've also come to learn recently that these symbols are not automatically evil, that they're vastly older than any of these groups put together, including the Freemasons. So the symbols cannot just automatically be evil. The numbers cannot automatically be evil. It's what is meant by them and how well you interpret them, use them, and understand them. Just like gematria is not automatically evil. We have a lot of very simple-minded people, and I'm not trying to be judgmental because I've been simple-minded myself about these things like I just expressed. But the first time they see gematria or gematria, however you want to say it, they think it's just automatically evil because you're using numbers. And that's like, how is a number evil? I mean, a number cannot be evil or good, okay? A number is a number. In the ancient languages, all letters were also numbers. There's no getting around this. If you ever learned Roman numerals in grade school, okay, you understand this already. The Roman numerals also paired as, that's why they call them numerals, so they're the letters that are also numbers. All the ancient languages were like this, including the Greek language that the Bible was written from, the New Testament, and the Masoretic text of the Old Testament. All of the Hebrew, the letters were also numbers. And so the Bible automatically is numeric in both Greek and Hebrew. Every single verse of the Bible is a math equation, whether you like to admit it or not. Every single word is math because every letter is a number. And to try to say, to close your eyes and plug your ears and scream la la la, it's not going to cut it for intelligent people that can pay attention. Okay? So if you're going to pretend like it isn't, then, you know, this is probably isn't the program you want to listen to. Because I refuse to live my life not admitting what is quite extant and evident and forthright obvious for anyone who pays attention. So we can go through the whole Bible, and I've done programs in the past, even when I was just learning the beginnings of Gematria. It's easy to find a lot of the riddles that are in the Bible. Like we did the one, you have to go back pretty far in my videos, but I did the one where the children of Israel were looking up at the serpent on the pole, okay? And the math of that made it really easy to find, and to find the 216 there. So they were literally just talking about, the 216, the diameter of the moon. Okay, that's that same, and it's really interesting because the moon has always been associated with healing, and there the math of that mathematical riddle there in what was it, in Exodus? I forgot all of a sudden. Genesis or Exodus? Yeah, Exodus. Where the children of Israel were bitten by the fiery serpents, and they had to look up on the pole, and the serpent on the pole, and when you do the math of that, it comes to the diameter of the moon, 2,160. And the moon has always been associated with healing. There's a lot of people that understand this today that make movies and cartoons, okay? I mean, my kids were watching the cartoon Avatar, and they got the girl there who is a water bender, and the water is used as healing, and she gets her power from the moon. Or the Scorpion King, for instance, was a wonderful movie full of this kind of knowledge. Go back and watch the most recent Scorpion King. I don't know about the old one. Oh, I didn't see the first one, but the most recent one shows the gate of the moon, and they use a cipher to open the door by shining the moon's beams through the cipher. And it's really amazing what they're telling you. Is that this knowledge is used extensively in ancient understanding here. So, and the Bible is completely chock full of Kabbalah and of Gematria and of sacred math and knowledge. So, pretending like it isn't, it's just not going to cut it for me. I'm going to understand this better as best I can, and the only people I know who will even talk about it are the Freemasons. Well, let's see from the Freemason, at least I think they will. I have not yet spoken to them, okay? I actually went by there today, and just like most churches, there's nobody there, So I know they're there on the 17th at 7 o'clock. It said that on the sign. So maybe I'll go knock on the door on the 17th if I'm available that day, if I'm not working. So let's just go through. This was written in 1871 by Albert Pike, who is a great uncle of Hugh Squire. And Hugh Squire has been telling me that the Freemasons did contribute a lot to the foundation of America. So this is, by and large, really important information that we should understand. And I do agree and understand. So I actually have a descendant of Albert Pike, who wrote this book, Morals and Dogmas, that is sort of like a primer for the first 3 degrees of Masonry, telling me, that is good stuff. This is good information. And when I read, and I did read it straight through, I got it and I read it, just like when usually when somebody sends me a book, like Pete there that's in the chat there, he sent me this. I read it straight through as soon as I got it. So if you think I'm missing any information and you send me a book, I will read it. And if I had more money, I'd have a lot more books. But if I can't find it for $5 on Amazon, most of the time I can't afford to buy it. But let's look through some of this stuff, and let's see if some of the things they say are spot on or just dead wrong. And I thought this quote was amazing. The laws of God are not obligatory on us because they are the enactments of his power or the expression of his will, but because they express his infinite wisdom. I thought that was pretty amazing. Now, all through this book, he talks about, here's the part I was just telling you about how Yod comes from 6 and God comes from 6 and all that sort of thing. And it talks about the tesserae. If you've watched Avengers, and they had that blue cube in the first couple Avengers movies called the Tesseract. You will understand where that comes from by reading this book, by the way. So if you don't think that the movie producers are steeped in Kabbalah knowledge, they certainly are, the knowledge of the Tesseract. So, here it talks about the tesserae indeed are the squares of the pavement and so forth, the black and white squares that you always talk about in Freemasonry, which doesn't come from Freemasonry. They're simply using ancient knowledge, okay? They talk about the all-seeing eye, okay, and what it really means, that it's just a symbol for God. The Bible talks about, by the way, sometimes it talks about God as a single eye in certain places, so that's not unheard of. The justice and mercy of God are in equilibrium, and that's what I was saying here in the last video that I made. This is perfect understanding. This is really good understanding, because John, in the book of John, the Bible says that Jesus is, I beheld his glory. The glory is of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. He is justice and mercy, grace and truth, the masculine and the feminine, the sun and the moon, the perfect balance of justice and mercy. Okay, so that's why he's both the Son of God, which represents the Son, and the Son of Man. Okay, you ever read? Maybe I should go back and review that again, because I know I got some new people on here who haven't heard this before. But Jesus represents both the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Okay, so that doesn't mean that Jesus is a woman. Okay, don't take it to the silly extreme or anything like that. But you could say that, in a sense, you could say that God is a woman. You're not being incorrect any more than if you say God is a man. Okay, because what did Jesus say? He said, in heaven they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels. Okay, in other words, in heaven you are already perfectly combined with the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. Sometimes I say sacred, sometimes I say divine. It means the same thing. So the divine masculine and divine feminine are already in perfect balance in heaven. So there is no male nor female. Okay, so if you think Jesus is man per se in heaven, okay, not really. Okay, he's already the perfect combination of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And it takes if you've been trained all your life that that's some sort of heresy or something, then that irks you when I say that. And I understand the feeling. I get that. And I'm not, one of these feminists out there trying to say God is a woman. No, that's just silliness. Okay, he's both the divine masculine and the divine feminine in perfect harmony. Okay, that's why in Revelations chapter 21, I believe it is, that in the New Jerusalem, the Bible says that there is no need for a sun or a moon, okay, for God himself is the light of the New Jerusalem, okay? Well, that means that God is both the sun and the moon. The prophet Malachi in the Old Testament prophesied about Jesus coming, and he called Jesus the Son of Righteousness, S-U-N, capital S, the letter U-N. So he was talking about the Messiah coming, and he called him the Son, S-U-N. Okay? Now, then John said that he was full of grace and truth. Okay? So he is the combination of mercy and severity. Okay? Justice and love. Perfect combination. And in Revelation, he's the light that is both the sun and the moon. All these concepts are related. He is the Son of God and the Son of Man. Okay? All these things go together. This is why women are related to healing, like water, okay, and like the moon. They all are associated with each other in this knowledge and understanding. Men are paired with the sun in this understanding. And that's why Jesus, as the Son of Man, was paired with the sun. But he's also paired with the moon in Revelation. None of this is coincidence, because in heaven we have the perfect fulfillment of the divine masculine and divine feminine perfectly paired together like it should be. And here on earth, we're supposed to strive to combine the divine masculine and the divine feminine in perfect harmony here together. And I think something that happened in the Garden of Eden, whether that's metaphoric or literal, has something to do with the split between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and that's what separated the sexes in some way. And to say that Genesis, in the way that it is written, must be completely literal, there's something very, very wrong with that. There's too much math involved in that. You have to see that there is an esoteric value that seems to outweigh the exoteric value of that passage. It doesn't mean the entire Bible is not literal, but it does very much seem to be indecipherable without the knowledge of the Zohar type Kabbalah understanding. If you take it only from the exoteric view, you're going to misunderstand what the Bible's saying. In the beginning, God created six, okay? It's hard. It's not hard to see. And then the division of the sexes is some sort of separation of the divine masculine and divine feminine as it is in heaven. And we see that later when we go to heaven, that we no longer have our masculine or feminine attributes separately, but we become the fulfillment of the perfect divine masculine and divine feminine again. On earth, when the divine masculine and divine feminine become disrupted in some way, you will find great problems that come from it. If a man is too mean, too overbearing, it'll affect his children. If a woman is too overbearing, it is very likely that if you have male sons, that they will become homosexual. If you have an effeminate man who doesn't stand up, or a masculine woman in the home, you might drive out of balance the divine masculine and feminine in your children. And that's where a lot of homosexuality comes from, because the divine masculine and divine feminine is best expressed through two sexes in the home. That's the way God made it here on earth. And we're to strive to create that balance. What we should not do is discount our wives, okay, men, and wives should not discount their husbands, but they should work to see the value of each other. And yes, I am the world's worst at this, and I am striving myself to learn this knowledge and to apply it better and better. When I first came out of college, I was very condescending towards women, very badly. And I learned that that something was wrong, and if I would have kept going down that road, I would have done what so many other people that came out of my college did. I was going to split a church. I was going to create a disaster. I was going to do something terrible. So I just gave it all up because I knew something was wrong. And I didn't know what at the time. Now I do. Now I understand. I had very little value or understanding in the opinions of my wife. Like very little. It was horrible. I was not a very nice person. And it took a long time to learn and respect and understand. And a lot of this knowledge from sacred math and sacred geometry taught me about how the balance of the divine masculine and divine feminine is very important. Just the other day, I thought very much about disciplining my children, and I talked to my wife, and I decided, listen, I need the feminine perspective on this, because if I go at it like I want to go at it, there's going to be very harsh punishment. And I don't know, I feel like I'm right, yes, but I feel like combining the divine feminine is the wise way to go. So I get my wife's advice and opinion before I do it now. I didn't used to do that, okay? I would just go in swinging, and the children had to suffer, and that does damage when you do that, okay? And likewise, a woman who tries to discipline her children without the added severity of her husband is going to do damage, because they're not going to get the same level of truth and the masculine perspective that says you need to come to terms with what you did. A woman by nature will undermine her children's growth and development by never causing them to see truth. A man will generally, as a rule, cause way too much truth, way too much severity, and not add the mercy and grace that is needed for children to develop correctly. As husbands and as wives, we need to look towards each other, and we need to strive to combine the forces of the divine masculine and the divine feminine that God has in us to help our children grow properly. And this is where all homosexuality comes from. Okay, this is where why so many men end up in jail. Okay, they might have a very severe dad, and so they learn to be abusive and angry, but they probably won't be homosexual. But most likely, if you have an overbearing woman in the home, a man will become a homosexual or tend towards, that way. Gender euphoria, transvestites, all this stuff. Euphoria, that's not the right word. Gender dysphoria. There we go. Not euphoria. Gender dysphoria, all of this comes from an unbalanced divine masculine and divine feminine. Symbols like the yin and yang in Taoism are not wrong. They symbolize the balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Okay, there's nothing evil about that. When we look at pentagrams and symbols like that, we're not talking about something that is evil. We are talking about tools that I believe were used to build mounds, that were used to build ancient structures around the world and helped pair knowledge. And a lot of it has to do with the 666 as well. These were just geometric tools. Revelations 13:18 is a math problem for you to solve. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can begin to understand what the 666 is truly saying. Take 13 and multiply it by 18. That'll give you the clue. You're back to, 432, I think? And multiply that by 2. And what is that? That's 864, the diameter of the sun. Okay, that's not a coincidence. That's 4 times the cube. That's why the sun is supposedly 400 times further away than the moon and 400 times larger, you see. God knew what he was doing when he made these things. And he made the sacred math. The people that invented the sacred math and knowledge and understanding knew the sizes of these things. That's how they came up with this knowledge. They used it to measure these sacred distances. And that's how they knew the exact size 3,000 years ago of the earth. That's why they didn't think it was flat. They knew exactly how big it was and how long it would take you to get from one side to the other, from this point to this point. And they understood that knowledge and they passed it down. Okay. This is old knowledge. So, back to our book here, Morals and Dogmas, which you were not supposed to get. And the reason is because probably some of you, I may be casting my pearls before swine right now and not know it. I don't know who the pearls are. I don't know who the swine are out there, and I don't know who the good people are who will take this knowledge and use it for good. And I don't know those of you who are brimming with anger right now because I dared mention this stuff. I don't know. I don't know who's who. Well, I know some of you, and I know some of you are taking it very well because you completely agree. But some of you, I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking. Truth conquers slowly. There is wondrous vitality in error. There's a lot of good things in this book talking just about, manhood, about loving your fellow man, about doing good. All in this book is just about doing good. There's not one thing in this book that promotes doing evil to anybody. Not one thing. A lot of it is paired with the Bible. Let's see. Now here, this I thought was good. And here's how he says that Freemasonry contributed to America. Christianity taught the doctrine of fraternity, but repudiated that of political equality by continually inculcating obedience to Caesar and to those lawful in authority. Masonry was the first apostle of equality. In the monastery, there's fraternity and equality, but no liberty, because they're stuck there, And Masonry added that also and claimed for man's threefold heritage: liberty, equality, and fraternity. That's the if you're not familiar with that phrase, liberté, equalité, fraternité. That's the French phrase, and they took the rights of man when General Lafayette, who helped win our revolution and was a big fan of American rights. He went back to France and he helped spread the knowledge of liberty, equality, fraternity, along with Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, and some others, helped spread that knowledge in France, and it took root somewhat, and that's their phrase now, liberty, equality, fraternity, to this day. Well, part of that comes from Masonry, because in Christianity and Romans 13, and this is not wrong per se, but try to understand it. It does teach in Romans 13 to be subject to the laws of the land. Okay, it does. However, to have complete equality among all men is also equality with your government officials. And that's what we believe in America. We believe that nobody is above another. Okay? Had we not had that, we would not have America. Had we only accepted it from the way it's being taught in Christianity still to this day, we would not have an American system of equality in government. Okay, the king or the rulers would be over the people. Instead, Freemasonry added the knowledge of equality of all mankind. Now, in government, the Bible says there's an equality of all mankind before God, but it doesn't say specifically that there is an equality of mankind in government. Okay, it does say that all people have equal value, but it says nothing about equality of mankind in government. Now, without that knowledge, that is an expression and an extrapolation that could be taken from the mysteries by people like Freemasons who study the mysteries and studied the Bible extensively and could glean that sort of information from the equality of mankind before God and make it the equality of mankind in government. Okay? Now, Freemasons brought that to you, whereas priests and pastors and evangelists did not bring it to you because they were not studying the Bible from those perspectives, and they should have. Shame on them for missing it. America wouldn't be what it is today without Freemasonry. So there is something to be said there. There is some knowledge there. Does that mean that Freemasonry is the end-all, be-all? Absolutely not. But they do represent a school of sacred knowledge, a mystery school. Okay, they are the modern day mystery school where the common person can go and try to study this information. Now, probably Jeremiah there that just entered chat has had a lot of bad experiences with Freemasons. His family has been in them, and a lot of them have taken the knowledge and turned it towards evil. Now, that is not to say that the knowledge itself is evil. That is to say that somebody took the sacred knowledge and used it for evil in the same way that witches take the pentagram and, the female Masons take the pentagram and they use it for their understanding of it. And yet the Satanists and the witches will take it and invert it for their reasons, and they consider it a symbol of Baphomet or whatever. Okay? But that is not intrinsic on the symbol itself. It's what you decide to do with the symbol. Symbols are not evil. Numbers are not evil. Math is not evil. Letters are not evil. It is what your intended understanding puts into it. Okay, it's what your intention puts into it, I should say. That might be a better way of saying it. If you intend to use knowledge for evil, it becomes evil. If you intend for knowledge to be good, it becomes good. If you intend for your gematria to hide a good message, then you might hide a good message through gematria. Likewise, what is usually the case is that they hide messages of murder and evil through gematria, at least in modern English gematria, okay, not in the gematria of the Bible. And the Bible is full of Hebrew gematria, Greek gematria, and in the King James Version, septenary gematria, based on the 7 days of the week in Genesis. That was used by people like Sir Francis Bacon and the translators of the King James Bible, who adapted the septenary cipher as the English cipher to replace the Greek and Hebrew ciphers of the Old and New Testament that were used to understand them in the original languages. How many of you learned this in Bible college? I went to Bible college. We didn't talk about this. And if you'd have mentioned it, you'd have probably got in trouble and had to work off offenses or something. I remember they made me work off offenses one summer one time while I was there. Crazy thing. In summertime, it's hot. It literally took me a couple of years later to graduate because I had to just plan times to work off the offenses. It was insane. Because they give them to you for everything, just every single day. You have to work an hour for every 10 offenses for the school. So every day they'd come into your bed wrinkled, give you, you'd have to work an hour for the school or whatever. Just every day, every single day they'd come in and do that. So I had to literally cut my schedule back on classes. It took several more years to graduate because of that. Well, they worked me in the summer one time when it's super hot. They just said, just take the wood pile from one pile to the other and bring it over here, and just pick it up and bring it back over there. And it's super hot. The next day, I literally passed out. Somebody had to drag me to the hospital, and they gave me a bunch of IVs and all this. I didn't even know I was that bad off. But anyway, if we'd have been learning stuff like this, maybe we wouldn't have been doing dumb stuff like that. Worrying about wrinkled beds and stuff like that. We did, I got out a lot sooner and maybe been able to do something more with my life than make a minimum wage, and do nothing but make YouTube videos. So I'm not thrilled about what we did at college. I'm not thrilled about it at all. But you can go back and watch my 3 videos on that I made recently if you want. Russell Anderson was probably part of a pedophile network in the Detroit area, most likely. I suspect strongly. I don't know that for a fact. So anyway, you can go back and look that up too. So let's see, what else do we got here? We got let's see what else did I want to mention here. Was there something else in that book? It's interesting how in Morals and Dogma here from 33rd Degree Mason Albert Pike, how they say that how he separates Moloch, and the symbols. Okay, like he understands that evil people have used these symbols, the symbols of Moloch and Mammon and that sort of thing, and he separates them. Okay, and in my former understanding, I would have thought that all symbols had something to do with the devil, and Moloch would have been an ancient evil deity in the Old Testament, and Moloch, Melech, and those were the ones that they sacrificed children to. Well, he separates them and says that there's a difference between the symbols for evil and good, and calls Moloch bad. Okay, so if there's any misunderstanding, if you think Freemasonry is promoting Moloch, which I used to think that, okay, you'd be wrong. You'd be mistaken. Freemasonry is not promoting any sort of evil at all. Instead, it talks about the brotherhood of mankind, about loving your neighbor, about you even have to believe in some sort of God to join it at all, okay? And in many parts of the world, you have to be a devoted, baptized Christian to be a Mason, but not in America, apparently. So, all symbols are not automatically evil, okay? Symbols are not evil nor good. They're just what you make of them, and that's it. Here's here's the other thing I wanted to talk about, and how the Masons were against slavery. Now, he fought for this, which is weird, okay, because, Albert Pike was a general for the Southern Army, the only Southern general to be buried in the North, okay? But here he talks in his book about how evil slavery is. So that tells you that not everybody who fought for the South was necessarily for slavery, okay? But it also tells you that, Freemasons are talking about the equality of mankind. So, it's an interesting dichotomy in how people understood things in the past and how did they play that out. I don't know. I don't know if he was, how can you justify fighting for the South if you're against slavery? Well, he must have had other ulterior motives in his mind why he thought that was important. But believe me, just because somebody writes a book and it has mysteries, that everything this guy says is not gospel. It's not all right. It's not all perfect knowledge. This is one man's opinion on the mysteries. That's it. That's all I'm going to take it as. Okay. But if I had people at churches, if I could go to my Sunday school class and I could talk to them about this stuff, maybe I wouldn't have to go talk to the Freemasons about it. I would like to understand this knowledge better and how to use it, but I'm not going to spend my life pretending like it's not there when it's so obviously abundant. When you talk about how Jesus is the descendant of 3 groups of 14 descendants, ancestors, sorry. What is 3:14? Well, that's pi. Okay, obviously that's pi in the Bible. Okay, so that's another example of a mystery that was put in there. Okay, you'll see that the lineage of Jesus has 3 groups of 14 ancestors going back to Adam. Well, that's not a coincidence. That's pi. Okay, it's sacred knowledge. And you can just go through the Bible and find these mysteries over and over again. It's no coincidence that Psalm 117, 118, and 119. Psalm 117 is the shortest chapter in the Bible, and Psalm 119 is the longest chapter in the Bible. Well, how does that relate to modernity? Well, if you think about 7/11 and 9/11, they are the same thing. Okay. September 11, Sept was 7. It used to be the 7th month, and now in the Gregorian calendar is the 9th month. And the Julian calendar was the 7th month. You say, well, why did they make it that? Because in their knowledge, they knew it meant the same thing. Okay, and this is what it meant. It meant it had to do with the golden ratio and with phi. And if you watched my last video on Facebook, I didn't put it on YouTube because I was sleepy. I actually drew it out, but I was saying things. The thoughts weren't coming to my head very well, and it was coming out foggy and kind of weird. But I did draw the reduced will of phi on there for you, so you can see exactly what that means. Psalm 117 and 119, and how the reduced will of phi in sacred knowledge. The first number is 108, and then from there on out, it goes from 117 forever. So 117 and 119 are the same. And then I'll go ahead and draw this again for you in case you missed this in the last video. I'll show you the gate of Apollo real quick again. Like I said, I was barely coherent in the last video. Oh, I was so tired. When I get tired, I get loopy. But the gate of Apollo, here's I and X, X and I. All over Roman architecture, you will see this symbol on actual gates. Okay, this would have been a door that would swing this way. This would have been a door that would swing this way. This is called the gate of Apollo. Okay. Well, what is this? If you know your Roman numerals, okay, 1 away from 10 is what? 9. 10 plus 1 is what? 11. Okay, you can just do a quick Google search on the gate of Apollo, and you will see this. Okay, I mean it's not something I just pulled out of my rear end or anything. I mean this was all over Roman architecture. Okay, that's 9/11, the gate of Apollo. So that's using Roman numerals. Okay, that you should have learned in grade school. At least we did at our school. Okay, so the gate of Apollo equals 9/11. Well, you might understand that Latin, the language of the Romans and of the Roman Empire, came from Greek. Okay? Well, in Greek, Jesus, my right here, you can see it there. Jesus, Christos, I-X. Okay? I-X, the gate of Apollo. Okay? That's the same thing. You understand? 9/11 is literally a symbol of Jesus. So do you think 9/11 might have been contrived with that number in mind for a reason? Yeah. If you have any common sense at all, you do. You understand it wasn't Muslims in a cave and terrorists that came up with that sacred knowledge and understood that. The Muslims don't know their sacred knowledge any better than the Christians do. It was somebody with a knowledge of Zohar, of a knowledge of Kabbalah that did that. Okay? Obviously, it wasn't the Muslims, and it wasn't some guy in a cave that came up with that. Okay? The reason they chose 9/11 for what happened on 9/11 is this sort of sacred knowledge. And if you don't understand that stuff, you walk around in a fog thinking, believing every lie that the media puts out, that the terrorists had something to do with 9/11, and they certainly didn't. Hey, Brent, how you doing? Good to see you on there, man. Came in late. You might want to rewind to the beginning when I'm done, Brent. Said all kinds of interesting things here today. So, well, I think I've shared about all I can share for today. So, I think I was coherent. Definitely not tired today. So, thanks for watching. And when I get this on YouTube, if you're watching it on Bow and Arrow on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. And please spread this around. And by all means, if you have a book or knowledge that you would like me to read, by all means, private message me on Facebook. I'll give you my address. I'll be more than happy to read it. I don't have any money, though. If I can't find a book for $5 or less, I just can't buy it. I'm literally strapped right now. I literally just went and applied for food stamps again. So, I mean, that's just the way it goes, You can be really smart in knowledge and stuff, but, people don't care about that when you try to work. So, I have a job. I mean, it's just, 40 hours a week at minimum wage doesn't do much. My wife does 40 hours a week at minimum wage, too, but you add nothing plus nothing, it still equals nothing. It's basic math, so. It's amazing because we've qualified for food stamps with both of us working 40 hours a week before. It's crazy. Alrighty, so I'll cut it off here.